Sticking to the first real deal. You know, Trish, I've seen you do some interviews over the last couple of weeks on some of the different shows. You've been voicing a kind of concern that was illustrated today with this GDP report.
Yeah, I mean, this is really bad. If you get another quarter like this, it means we're in recession. Hopefully, we won't see that. But look, Charles, we're not doing so great. The reality is this economy is stuck in a pretty bad spot. You think about historically where we've been as a country, right? We were an agrarian society, became a manufacturing society. We've moved recently more into the services sector. And so, and a lot of those jobs now are disappearing. So you say, well, what's next? I mean, what is really going to help propel this economy as we move forward?
Well, the transition from the agrarian economy to what we became was helped by a couple of industrial revolutions. I kind of feel like we're in a third revolution, and it's a technology revolution. And I'm not sure, I'm not a Luddite or anything like that, but do you sense that there's something wrong policy-wise that needs to be fixed, or is there something, a new paradigm out there, a new reality?
Well, it's a combination of both. So policy-wise, we're not in very good shape.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of things that we could be doing in terms of lowering individuals' taxes, corporations' taxes. We should be able to repatriate all this money that's overseas right now. Right. I mean, pretty easy stuff. We can talk about the Fed. That's a whole other issue. But when you think about fundamentally what's going on, for anybody to think that this is temporary, I wish it was. I think we are in a real shift right now, and you're right, we're moving increasingly towards technology, which means you need an increased amount of education, and we just don't have it.
Yeah, and that's something that scares me for the future. You know what? We are not paying attention to that at all. Jim?
Something's got to give here because the job hiring and the GDP report don't jive. So either...
Well, I mean, honestly, though, Jim, let's face it. I think we became so used to mediocrity that all of a sudden we get 230,000 jobs, and we're, you know, Ronald Reagan had a month, one single month of 1 million jobs. So I think we've been lured into this thing that, 230,000, break out the pom-poms. But realistically, considering the depth of the pullback, there should have been so much demand that when we came back, we should be doing 500,000 jobs a month.
I mean, look, I think the downward pressures that are that really are affecting the GDP numbers, you know, the oil shock, I think people had underestimated, and one of our best performing sectors, and the turn down in that has cost a lot of jobs and a lot of investments. And now the trade deficit, the strong dollar, I think, is taking a bigger toll. But if the GDP numbers are right, to Trish's point, if we're going to see another quarter like that, then those 200,000 jobs that we're saying are not that meaningful, we're going to see less of them because we're not going to see that job growth with that GDP.
But that widening trade deficit you mentioned, that lopped off 1.9% from the GDP. So, you know, you could blame a lot of this on a strong dollar, but in my opinion, a strong dollar is here to stay. So if it is here to stay, we're going to have to deal with this going forward. I mean, imports are going to continue to increase and exports aren't going to be there.
But there's always a blame, Hillary, right? Well, it's a strong dollar. It's the weather. It's transitory. To Trish's point, you know, listen, I'm kind of worried that these experts somehow believe we're going to snap back out of this. You don't continue to snap back. If you hit the canvas 3 times, one time you don't get back up.
But see, I think that the numbers that we're seeing, housing and auto sales are so strong that it points to the fact that the economy, it's not falling off a cliff. We have the strong dollar. We have energy that's been a drag, especially regionally. But I think that we have seen, we even saw an increase in earnings.
So how do you explain today's GDP report then? I mean,
energy's been a drag. And I have to say that strong dollar was really a shock for many companies. And as Matt just said, it's a matter now of adjusting.
So we're focusing on the business side of this, and it brings us to our next real deal, the paradoxical reaction to falling gasoline. Remember that it was the godsend. It was going to do everything for us. Well, this year it makes you wonder, what would it take for consumers to actually step up to the plate? One of the things that stood out for me in this report, savings. They zoomed higher. Look at that number, 5.5%. That was up from 4.7% last quarter. And if you look at the last couple of years, it's been at 4.9%. We haven't seen this kind of savings or fear since 2012. To me, consumers, Trish, are clearly spooked about something. Now, we know their wages haven't gone up, but why, when gasoline prices went down, did people take that savings and put it in a tin cup somewhere?
Because they don't believe it, Charles. They don't believe it's here to stay. They've been through some pretty rough times. I mean, you think back, 2000 and the tech meltdown. Then we had 2008, and we still haven't recovered from that. You had the market really struggling, people feeling like they don't want to be invested in this market. They're struggling to find jobs. If they're getting one of those 200,000 jobs a month, it's not paying them so well. Wages basically basically haven't moved anywhere in 2 decades. And so they don't believe it. They don't feel secure enough.
You know, and that was reflected, Steve Cortez, in your city in Chicago, where you had a runoff election. I mean, I think it was the greater of two evils, for lack of a better word right now, but economic evils. But people are grappling, and because of that, it just seems like they've thrown their hands in the air.
Right, Charles, we have Wall Street at all-time highs, but Main Street sure doesn't feel that. And in terms of our election here, I think you're exactly right. A lot of that was about economic anxiety. Unfortunately, the choice between Rahm and Chewy was, would you rather get punched or kicked? Neither is preferable, clearly. But when we look at the economy, and look, I think this is the point that context is so important here. Is there a recovery? Clearly. Are things going okay in the United States? Yes, again, I think fairly clearly. But the point is, recoveries are supposed to be gangbusters. In other words, you know, to use a sports metaphor, this is Triple Crown season right now. If you can't get out of the gate, which is what happened to the United States in the financial crisis, then you have a lot of ground to make up, and you better run like crazy. The American thoroughbred is still trotting along. We cannot run like crazy, and I believe it's mostly because of policy, because people and companies don't have the confidence to go for that long ball that we need. We should have 5% growth. We should be adding 7 figures in jobs numbers. We're simply not getting there, and we need to. We will eventually, but we're not doing it now.
And to piggyback off your thoroughbred horse analogy, the only one getting the whips are successful people, right? I mean, the government is whipping successful people, successful businesses. The federal government took in a record amount of money in taxes in April, but they had, they keep spending it. So why? And it's the big bet. We saw the inventory number go up, Hillary. Businesses are making a big bet that everyone's right, that these economists are right, and that somehow the consumer will come around in the second half of the year. But why would they?
The consumer would come around because there are those that are working. What happened is that we're all confused, but the reason is that there are those that will never come back to work after 2008, 2009. But as everyone's been sitting in fear, with their head in the sand, actually things are better and consumers do spend. Now they might not have a lot of money in the bank. Well, or they're putting
more money in the bank.
Okay, well, 1% more. But
that's a lot. But here's the problem.
I think they spend. Look, Starbucks hit a 52-week high today.
I know. We love our coffee and we love our hair products, but the needle isn't moving. And I mean, to Trish's original point, are we going to settle for mediocrity in this country?